He said, people climb up Mount Everest. They risk their life. They climb up these mountains to get a little golden cup, he said. I don't even know whether you get a golden cup, but for a golden cup, right? And maybe have your name somewhere. He was on Mount Everest. The first person with a long nose on Mount Everest. Because you won't be the first person, so now it's only like the first Indian, the first woman, the first person with one leg, the first, if to be a first, there must be something, right? And then, wow. So what? I mean, come on. And then you die, and you don't even know it was you. Right? Assume you're reborn, you found a cure to cancer, and you don't even know it was you. Oh great, this person, maybe you're jealous of this person found a cure for cancer, not knowing it's actually your previous. So you see, it's so bizarre. It's actually so bizarre. The things we do, we spend so much energy, time and energy. If we were to spend that time and energy towards emptiness, wow, that would truly bring us happiness. Even if we're not the first person, I don't know, with blue eyes or with brown eyes, scaled Mount Everest. Am I making sense? It's only for that. It's for our own good to understand this. Okay? And hopefully these steps, how we get from our misperception to so much suffering, so much worry, unnecessary worry. It's like worrying about a monster in the closet. Right? You think there's a ghost in the closet. There's this thing there. And your whole day is only about this thing in the closet. Right? It's not there. It was never there. It will never be there. All we need to do is open the door and check. But we're too busy feeding the monster and worrying about it and, planning ahead and, wanting reputation for it, etc. Okay? All right. Now, going back to the text. So we're still, there's a little bit left of 23. Chapter 23, we got to the beginning. Now, as I said before, this is a really difficult chapter. Difficult in the sense that most of you are not, I believe, I'm not sure, but most of you haven't studied emptiness for years and years. Usually what you start off with is, how does the table exist? How does the eye exist? How do, the things we're very much familiar with. We analyze those. Here we're analyzing something we're familiar with. Well, we're familiar with it in a sense because we have those negative emotions, we have them, but we're not trained in recognizing them as much as we're trained in recognizing, thinking of I. We're very good with that. But also with regard to a table, a car, etc., like sense objects. But even though it's difficult, doesn't mean it's not helpful. So, looking at afflictive emotions, there's 3 mentioned here. They're usually described as the 3 poisons. Attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Ignorance, not a mind that doesn't know, not a state of just knowing, but a mind that with regard to its object is diametrically opposed to reality. It perceives the opposite of what is there. So there could be different types. It could be a mind that perceives that which is impermanent to be permanent. That perceives that which is in the nature of giving us dukkha, that is unsatisfactory experiences. We believe that to be true happiness. And so forth. It's a whole list of them. Different misperceptions. Here in this case, that which lacks inherent existence, we perceive that to inherently exist. So that's called ignorance. Then, of course, there's attachment, exaggerating the positive qualities of something and not being able to let go. And there's aversion, which exaggerates the negative qualities and has resentment towards that object. Of course, then a range of others, but here 3 are mentioned. So, do they exist truly? Okay? Right? Because what our mind does is, we are able, at some point, once we understand the reasoning of lack of inherent existence, we may be able to move away a little bit from the self, move away from the table. Okay, that doesn't, but then our mind needs something new. So suddenly the anger becomes truly existed. Or the ignorance, that inherently exists. Or in the Buddha, the Buddha is kind of a little bit more real. Okay? Meditation is a little bit more real. The other thing's less real, but it's just how our mind works. It kind of holds on to things to exist in that way. Whatever we consider to be important, that becomes more solid, and it actually is. So with regard to anger and attachment, do they exist truly? Does our mind exist truly? Because of course, what do we hear in Buddhism? We hear that phenomena exist subjectively. Okay, so they don't exist objectively over there. They come from the mind. And before we become aware of it, there's a sense our mind is just a little bit more real than the things around us. Okay? That actually makes us, by way of that philosophy, a chitta matrin. There's a whole system of philosophy in Buddhism where the philosophers, and they're not considered to be the highest philosophers, as you know, they believe the mind truly exists, but there's nothing really out there. That's another extreme. But we go through these motions, as I said, as part of our practice, so to believe the mind exists more solidly. And in particular, the afflictive emotions. Now let's check. If they really existed truly, well, anger would be independent of other things. Would in and of itself just be anger. But it depends on something unpleasant. You can't be angry unless you perceive something as unpleasant, as negative. Try to be angry with someone who you believe to be Mother Teresa or, I don't know, Nelson Mandela. Can you? Have you ever had that? Like you're really angry with someone and another person comes along and says, well, the person you're angry with, they're actually really kind. And you're telling them, stop talking about that. I'm really angry right now. You know your anger is going to subside just because you can't be angry with them if you believe they've benefited you. So anger only works as long as you believe that person to be truly bad. You need to total misperception, otherwise it can't. But you need to see that person as something unpleasant, as something negative, as undesirable, whatever word you use. Here the word is used unpleasant, but that can mean so many different things. Then you can be angry. So anger is only possible if there is a preceding sense of this is undesirable, this is not good, bad, evil, unpleasant. Okay? So it depends on something else. Again, in order for it to rise, it couldn't arise without that. Long, short, right, kind of idea. It's in relation to that it can actually rise. Also, furthermore, pleasant, where does pleasant come from? It comes from a sense object. As human beings, we live in a world where everything we take to mind, we can only take it to mind because they're sense objects. Right? So, because they're colors, because they're shapes, they're sounds, etc. Now, because they are there, we then perceive someone's speech as pleasant, someone's actions as pleasant. I mean, I judge a person, and I'm not saying the person is color, the person is shape, the person is sound. Of course they're not. But it's through their manifestation of saying certain things, having visual express, like facial expressions, doing things that we pick up without sense consciousness, that we become aware of them. Now, those then give rise to pleasant or unpleasant feelings, and they in turn give rise to certain emotions. But these emotions don't exist in and of themselves because they depend on pleasant phenomena, and they themselves don't exist inherently. Why? Because they depend on sense perception. And then the sense objects, do they exist inherently? No. We've heard about it yesterday, where physics helps us that the colors we perceive are just light waves. Okay? They depend on something else, but they don't exist as solidly as we believe. It's a dependence on many other factors that we perceive something that's blue. It's not inherent in the object. It's not found in the object. We just perceive it that way in dependence on a variety of different factors. So again, not intrinsic, the blueness, the this and that, not intrinsic in the object. In fact, it's pressure waves and light waves and, receptors in the body, etc. So being hot and cold does not exist from the side of the object. It's in relation to our experience that it's hot or cold. Okay? So, Having said all this, therefore, our anger and attachment cannot exist in and of themselves. They're just labeled in relation to many other factors. For instance, pleasure, displeasure, and a mistaken appearance, which in turn also don't exist inherently because they're also dependent on a variety of other factors. They're just labeled on the basis of certain sense factors, and so we can go on forever. And this is what this text does, right? In the first few verses, saying these afflictive emotions, they don't exist as solidly. Is that a question? Yeah. Can it wait? Is it clarification? Then I'll answer it right away. It's actually a question.
Something that bothers me, I mean, the mind is merely imputed phenomena. Happiness is merely imputed phenomena. So where does it all end?
Where does it all end? Yeah, we want an end. Wouldn't it be nice to have an end? Like, yes, this is a very interesting question. It's almost like you're moving towards the Svatantrika, where they say, yes, it's kind of all labeled, but there's something underneath. There's something solidly there. Right? We want there to be something a little bit more solid because everything is disappearing. Well, where does it end?
Well, does it end? I'm not sure it ends.
How do you want it to end?
I don't.
How do you want it to end?
Well, being happy is a mere fantasy. Is a mere imputation.
Enlightenment.
Okay, it's a mere fantasy.
I don't know what is enlightenment.
Okay, it's a mere fantasy. It's a mere projection. It's a mere illusion. Actually, there's a bit of a tendency in the Buddhist scriptures to say it's like an illusion. It's like a fantasy. In the sense that we don't say it doesn't exist. We say it's like an illusion in the sense an illusion appears to exist one way, in which way it cannot exist, and exists. I mean, its appearance and its existence don't match. So, of course, happiness exists. It exists. So, therefore, it exists. However, it doesn't exist in the way in which it appears to us. So it is like an illusion. It's like a projection. When you gave the example of Lama Zopa Rinpoche saying you should think things are just like an illusion, they say that is initially a good way of dealing with emptiness if you don't really understand it. Just remind yourself, oh, this situation, the way I perceive it, doesn't exist that way. It's like an illusion. Okay? So just in terms of what you said, happiness is just an illusion. It's like an illusion. As in, like, of course there is happiness. Happiness exists, but as merely labeled based on certain other factors. Okay? In and of itself, there is no happiness. Right? So, but where does it end? Where do you want it to end? If you say, where does it end? What do you mean with it ends?
I'm not even sure it can end. I'm just...
Right. Okay, can or cannot, maybe, does it end? But what do you mean with end? What is it? I'm not really sure what you mean with end, as in like, is there nothing there? Kind of like, there's no end, there's just nothing there? Or is it like, what do you mean with end?
Well, we're here, I mean here, because we have suffering. End of suffering is happiness, which is a mere fantasy.
Which is like a mere fantasy, which is like a mere... It exists,
so
but...
suffering is a mere fantasy too.
But when you say fantasy, what do you mean with fantasy? It's not there?
Merely imputed.
Oh, merely imputed. Okay, it's merely imputed. Alright, okay, I agree with that. So suffering is merely imputed, happiness is merely imputed. Where does all that end? Where do you want it to end?
I stay with a question mark. I don't know.
No, I'm asking you, when you have that question, I know you don't know where it ends, but I don't even know what you mean with the end. In order to be able to address that question, what do you mean where it ends? In time?
Is this suffering or is this happiness?
Where do you draw the lines? Is that what you're asking? How do you distinguish between happiness and suffering?
Well, subjectively, I can distinguish. But again, if I think that I'm merely imputed this feeling as happiness, and I'm merely imputing this feeling is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Is this suffering? Is this happiness?
Okay. So now his question really is this. If it's merely labeled, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's merely labeled, well, it's totally up to me what it is. It's kind of like I can do anything. Where's the limit to that? Important question, if I get you right. Right? It's like, it's not there, truly there. So there's a sense, anything is possible. Ooh, that's a little bit too far. Anything is possible. Because when we say things are labeled, it is still independent on many other factors. You can't just label and say, okay, this is an elephant. It's not inherently a table, so now it's an elephant. No, it doesn't work that way. That is taking it a little bit too much to the extreme of, we've just created this. We've just made something out of nothing. No. In order to label, what do you need? A mind that labels, a label, and a basis of interpretation. Right? A basis for the labeling. So those three, which means you can't just decide to call this an elephant if the basis of basis of interpretation for an elephant is not these things. Right? So it's a little bit kind of like we moved a little bit too far from the middle. We're trying to get away from solidly this, and automatically we move like it's nothing, and we can just label it. And then ask yourself, first of all, the two aspects. Does the labeling exist truly? And you're just creating something out of nothing? Where you fall into both extremes. The labeling exists truly, and there's nothing there, and you're just creating it. Okay? So it's like the Matrix, as far as I don't know the Matrix, but as far I've seen little clips. So it's like the Matrix seems to be true, and everything else is not true, and you can make it. Something like that, but people explain to me I may have the wrong view of the Matrix. But, the Matrix, it goes to a certain degree, works to a certain degree, but you have that thing where something is actually truly there, and the other thing doesn't really exist, it's not there. This is not what Buddhism talks about. The mind and its object are both merely labeled, but in a way in which not anything is possible. That's what's so difficult. But, what we do as a natural tendency, what we do is really interesting. We're not very happy with negation. What you do as part of your meditation is you negate. Alright? That's what we are told initially. Don't think of emptiness. That's what the scriptures tell us. Don't think of how it exists, but think of how it does not exist. But we can't stick with that for very long. We don't like negations as much. In fact, some people say negations don't exist, which is, of course, from a Buddhist point of view, that's bizarre, of course, negations exist. But the point is, we don't spend enough time just looking for the object and being satisfied we cannot find it. Right away our mind goes, well, how does it exist? We want to know how it exists. But because we haven't negated yet, we're still with inherent existence, and now try to understand, with this view of inherent existence, how phenomena exist conventionally. Can't do it, because the two clash. Conventional existence, mere conventional existence, and our sense of inherent existence. That is our main difficulty. And it's throughout cultures, it's everywhere the same, that initially, we're encouraged to just look for the object. Don't try so hard to establish how it does exist until you come again and again to the conclusion, it cannot be found. When I look for the self, it cannot be found. Right? I'm not saying because the text does that, it does talk about how things really exist, it actually does that, but it spends more time of just pointing out the absurdities if it existed inherently. Okay? So there's an analysis or an analogy that they use. They say when a person tells you something and half of what they tell you is a lie, so what they tell you is like a mixture between truth and lie. In order to understand the truth, you need to negate enough to be able to, you have to first negate the lie. And only what you're left with, that is the truth. If right away you're trying to dig for the truth and you still mixing in the lie, you will not get the real picture. You will not understand what actually is reliable in terms of what the person said, if it's a mixture. Does that make sense? So, I'm just saying, and what you just addressed, it's exactly that. Like, how does it then exist? How does it exist? Okay? And it's just natural, and you will do that. But if you know right from the beginning, that's a tendency. When you see like an apparent contradiction, that's probably because you've not spent enough time negating and just remained with that negation. As in, like, you look for the object, is it this, is it this? And when you don't find it, you just absorb your mind, you enter into an absorption, and I'm not talking about the highest, deepest absorption. Well, we'll take a while to get there. But just not being able to find it. Remain with that. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find this self. Without going right away, oh, but how does it exist? You need to absorb your mind into it a little bit, that your mind gets used to that a little bit. And then you've negated it, and then you get out of it, and you go, well then, how does it exist? Without going right back to the inherent existence, but having kind of let go of that to a certain degree. Then, and you can only do it for that long, then inherent existence takes over again. Again, you need to negate that. Okay? Kind of merge your mind in that sense, can't be found, right? And then it's merely labeled. And that's a process. It's a process that takes years, possibly lifetimes. But it's worth it. So, right? Does that make sense? I don't know, this answer doesn't answer your question, but this is a very natural, and I know what you mean because I find myself thinking that way over and over again. Okay? But that is where you've gone a little bit too far to the side. You need to move back. Okay? That things are merely labeled in dependence on many other factors that are also merely labeled, but nonetheless, those merely labeled factors you need, and you can't make anything out of anything. Okay? Alright, great. Having said all that, I'm going back to the afflictive emotions, therefore, if you look for the anger, itself, so how would you go about it? Watch your own anger. Okay? Watch your own anger when it's there. And when you do that, it seems to be true anger there. And remind yourself, where's that anger? Is it each moment? Is it within the object? Is it within the the unpleasant feeling that you had as a result of? No. It's in relation to that anger has arisen. But then that pleasant feeling, look for the pleasant feeling. Where is that? Is it in the object? Right? The mind itself, it experiences pleasure, but each moment of the mind, you can't experience pleasure if there's only one single moment of the mind. It's too short. Right? So you need to have a continuum of moments to experience pleasure. None of those moments is pleasure itself. All of them become pleasure. Call that pleasure. But again, it's only labeled. Even if the mind experiences the pleasure, that is just labeled as pleasure, because one day you may label it as pleasure, another day it's not pleasure. If you experience something greater a moment earlier, then that level of pleasure is kind of ordinary and boring. But if a moment earlier you experience great suffering, then whoa, that is pleasure. So it's in relation to unpleasant feelings that you can feel pleasure. It's in relation to pleasure. This is also what chapter 26 says, that unless you have the other feelings, you couldn't determine its pleasure, or like again, you need long for short, short for long, pleasant for unpleasant, etc. The right clarification? Or question?
When you say merely labeled,
we get to that. That's
it implies that it does not depend on anything else. Only it's labeled.
No. Merely. The word merely means it doesn't have an existence on its own. It doesn't exist inherently, but is labeled. So merely labeled doesn't mean inherently labeled, in and of itself labeled. It's important to explain what the word merely means. It means it has no existence from its own side, and the only reason it does exist is because it's labeled.
That's not the usual
Not the usual way, but usually we don't say things like an having existence anyway.
We would say label, however, depending upon causal positions, parts, and consciousness.
Okay, but the word merely in Tibetan, and I believe in English too, it excludes something, right? He's only da. This person is only whatever, a waitress or waiter, whatever, right? Or is only a footballer. The word only implies he's not something else, right? So when you say, the way you explain it, I agree with what you say, but how does the word merely exclude something if you were saying it means it is labeled independent on other things? What does the merely exclude in your case? Merely means it excludes something, right? I'm only German, which means I have no other nationality, by implication, right? I'm only German, or I'm only a nun. So I'm nothing more than that kind of thing, right? So that's what here, in this case, the word only means. So only labeled, it excludes something. What does it exclude? So you're saying, if it excludes inherent existence, that doesn't make sense. So, but it must exclude something. What do you think it excludes?
For me, it sounds like merely excludes everything.
Everything?
Except label.
Does it exclude a vase being a vase? For instance, this table is merely labeled. Does it exclude this table from being a table? When you say everything, it should exclude it from being impermanent. It should exclude it from being a table. Would you say that it excludes that as well? It's merely labeled. It's labeled. Okay, it is labeled. But is it a table or not?
It shouldn't, but
it shouldn't.
The meaning of the word is I'm only human. That is not an animal, not this or not that. I'm human.
Did that exist?
Okay. All right. So, well, I guess it's totally random. In some cases, the word only can exclude. When I say I'm only German, I'm not saying I'm not human, right? I'm not saying it doesn't exclude that. It just means, in this case, I have no other nationality, I suppose. Now, it depends on my intention, of course. What I want to exclude with the word only, and you may have a different perception of what the word only. It really depends on. So the Buddha's intention, when he said things are merely or only labeled. Things are only labeled. Merely is maybe not such a good word because merely seems to be like, it's a negative, it's got a negative connotation, right? Oh, he's merely a laborer or something. He's only a laborer, so merely has a bit of a negative connotation. So only labeled, it seems like, if you say only labeled, the intention of the Buddha was to say, it doesn't have any existence on its own, it's not able to define itself, there's nothing within it that makes it a table unless we call it a table. So in other words, it lacks an existence of being inherently a table, and it's only a table because it was called that. That's what the word only means. I'm glad you bring it up. But this was the intention of the Buddha, so therefore, I think you're right, the one. You could include other things in the only, but since the Buddha coined that term, the Buddha has the right to determine what the only refers to and or what the only eliminates, and it eliminates an existence that on its own is a table. It's inherently a table. It's another way of saying it just is a table, it always was, and it doesn't need anything else to be a table. That is refuted when you say, no, it's called a table, and only because it's called a table, it is a table. There's nothing from the side of the table that makes it one. Does that make sense? But that doesn't mean, to go back to what Shuki said, it doesn't mean we can just make it a table. It's nothing. No. You need a basis of invitation. You need a mind to label, and you need a label. Okay? You need those three things.
When you would say merely labeled, not merely labeled, and depending upon causes, conditions, parts, and consciousness.
And labeling. When you say label. Okay, all right. Well, we talk a little bit more about like the dependence, in which way it is dependent, but actually you're just saying it twice when you say dependent and merely labeled.